Sounds good. Yeah, get your headphones on and let's talk into our mics and
let's do this.
All right, let us What just happened? You almost spilled your beer.
Things, yeah.
Oh yeah. Well,
haven't even started drinking yet.
Nope. Well, made up for it last night, I guess.
Ooh, did we ever?
Hey, I guess we are recording. Hello, and welcome to the Moon Underwater. I'm Kelly Daniels.
And I am Steve Jones.
How you doing, Steve Jones?
A little slow today.
A little slow.
How about yourself?
Let's. Have never had more energy. Something about staying out late drinking wine.
Yeah.
And I love that this reviewing last night. I went over to Steve's house it was Easter.
Yeah.
Today is Easter Monday.
It is.
I didn't even know Easter Monday was a thing.
I didn't either.
But
I always tell my wife that's not a thing.
No.
Easter Sunday.
It's fake.
Yeah.
It's fake.
Yeah.
But here we are, recording on Easter Monday. And my favorite part of thinking about last night was the fact that I drank at least one glass, maybe 2 glasses of corked wine.
Oh, bad.
That I didn't even notice. I couldn't. It was just like
it tasted
anything.
like sulfur.
Well, maybe
It's a new flavor.
Maybe I like sulfur.
New flavor
okay?
profile.
Maybe I like sulfur, Steve.
High sulfur content.
Not everybody is a snob. Okay,
I am a snob. But I'm drinking the PBR and I'm digging it.
You are. It's funny. I used to be a waiter at really fancy restaurants, and so I had to know wines. I would go to like wine tasting things for professionals so that we could know how to talk about them and so I could at least fake it a little bit, and I knew a lot of the California wines at the time, and
the only ones that matter.
I was definitely not in that mode last night after it was the third bottle.
It was the third
that
bottle.
Popped, and not that it was just the two of us drinking.
No.
Anyway,
no. There was more, but you get lost in the number of bottles that have been opened and how much you've had. It's not
sadly
not a good look today.
No. So, but here we are, and we probably should mention our. It's actually perfect that we're hungover today because
it's totally perfect.
We're going to talk about Animal House, the classic 1978 college party comedy, and we're also going to kind of use it as a vehicle, perhaps, to talk more seriously about higher education.
Yeah.
And perhaps some of the problems that sector is. So I don't know. Not to over determine things right now. I was also thinking that this movie reminded me of other movies, and maybe we could just go on a little college sort of spin for a couple of episodes at least, because I feel like we're not going to cover everything. I want
to point out, by the way, normally I have my iPad with me, and I had already left the house and was down the street, and I have Apple Notes, and so I can view the notes here. That is why I'm on my phone.
Okay.
It's in Do Not Disturb.
Sure, I gotcha.
So I actually wanted to start by talking about the fact that it is a John Landis film, and some other notable John Landis films.
So who is John? I sure recognized a lot of the actors in it, but I actually don't know. Like Harold Ramis was involved in it.
Yeah, Harold Ramis is great.
Some pretty big names, and almost everybody, all the actors, even if I couldn't name every single one, I'm like, oh, I know that guy. I know that guy. So, yeah.
All right, so let's start out with one of my personal favorites, near and dear to my heart, being a resident, or former resident of the suburbs of Chicago anyway, Blues Brothers. John Landis film.
Oh, makes sense.
Only a couple years later.
Yeah.
And fantastic Chicago movie. Some great moments. John Belushi again.
I loved it. I watched it with my family. My Italian wife, who doesn't know a lot of older American pop culture, and she loved it.
It's so good.
And my 12-year-old loved it.
Yeah.
So it's like me, my wife, and my son all love the same movie.
I love that movie.
That is that's a hat trick right there.
It's not my favorite Chicago movie of all time, though.
No.
There's one better.
I don't know what.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, my senior skip day, when we didn't actually skip because we were too chicken too, so we had our parents call us in. We went to a Cubs game, and we had cigars.
I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't go here. But I'm also like Gen X, and then I'm some Gen X Facebook group, and they're always posting all this pop culture stuff from the 80s. And Ferris Bueller's Day Off always comes up, and I never say anything because I don't engage in that kind of stuff. But I'm like, okay, I'm like one of the very few. I do not like it. I didn't watch it when I was young.
Wow.
I just missed it somehow. I was a Fast Times at Ridgemont High guy.
What a good
movie spoke to me.
Well, yeah.
That was my experience, man.
But
Ferris Bueller,
some cool buds.
Here's the thing. Yeah. Here's the so what this Jefferson guy was saying. I should practice that if I'm going to try to do Jeff Spicoli. You better get it right. Okay, Ferris Bueller was like a snotty rich kid.
Yeah, kind of.
And everybody that he defeats is like a working class person who has to work for a living. Yeah. And watching it as a grown-up, especially somebody who worked in the restaurant industry for a long time, the person he really humiliates
is the waiter.
Is the maitre d',
yeah.
And I was just like, you know
Dave
what?
Froman,
Fuck
the
these snotty little kids with their rich parents and their super fancy car. And
I might have been one of those kids.
Well, hey man,
it's all right.
Also, I like the Breakfast Club when I was that age, but then I watched it when I was a grown up, and I'm like, I was more on the grown up side toward the
really.
Well, maybe not. That guy was kind of a jerk.
They were all
teacher.
the stereotypes, right?
Yeah.
And but it was fun. It's a good movie.
It's just that when you become a teacher, your loyalties definitely change.
I have questions about that from today's film.
Yeah.
And I did say film.
Film. So Animal House film. It was.
Oh, wait, there's more John Landis movies I want.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have to discuss
them.
No.
I
want to make the list.
I'm not going to stop on everyone.
And I didn't get the full list here, but Spies Like Us.
All right.
What another great film. Three
Never
Amigos.
Saw it. Oh, okay.
And Coming to America.
All right.
I mean, that's like
pretty
those
good.
Are some chops. Yeah.
I guess so, yeah.
So, all right, so what if we have members of our listening audience that have never seen Animal House? How would we start out describing this?
It's 1978 is when the film is released.
Yeah.
And so you got to get into that mode.
But the film's about 1962.
62.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, we both read an article. We don't need to dive into the article yet, but it just happened. So, being a professor, I get a daily newsletter from the Chronicle of Higher Education. That's like the big newspaper for all of higher ed. It's the huge, whatever, the New York Times of higher ed news, I guess. And just that, like a day after you decided that we were going to do Animal House, or maybe it was a day after I watched it, I came across an article that was about student housing and how the whole history of student housing and how it started. Like in the 50s, it would have these adults who would watch the kids who, college students, but they were really concerned with controlling their moral sense of, no girls, no opposite sex, no alcohol, it was all like, we're the classic parental figure that's trying to...
Right.
And then it eventually had this like period of chaos during the hippie movement, when young people were protesting Vietnam, and then
Kent State,
and the adults basically just stopped enforcing stuff, and the kids just went wild. Interesting that Animal House actually came out during that wild period, even though it was set in the time where that was just starting to happen. Like
my mom went to college in the 60s during, like the various riots on campus, and she talks about, she's like, there was one semester where they just sent us home. That was it. Whatever you had in the class, that's what we got. Yeah. She went to University of Buffalo in New York, and she had said it was, it was crazy. So this is sort of at the beginning of that time period, right? 1962, Vietnam War protests start, and then kind of go up through the late 70s or the mid 70s, right?
Yeah. And then eventually this article that we can talk about later says that a new thing comes to replace the old sort of school marmish finger wagging. Yeah. And then what replaces it is a kind of progressive politics finger wagging. And,
right.
And that's where you get the regulating what kind of Halloween costumes they can have and all that, and a lot of speech codes and all that. So just, I guess the first thing is that it takes place during this like middle period where students were able to really be wild because the grown-ups were just not enforcing stuff. But the other thing about it is that I don't think there were, I think it was like probably the first college party movie, and we've seen so many of them now that it's just, it's this genre. It's been there forever. I suspect this is the one that started it all.
It has to be.
And every single joke that was on it, I've seen repeated in different movies.
Totally.
It's being like ripped off left and right.
Yeah.
And so it is the original kind of wild party drinking, celebration of drinking, hedonism, kind of sexy or sexual, I guess.
Yeah.
And crude. And they give in the finger to the authority and all that kind of stuff. And then the authority figures are all... I got to say, I did like the dean, though.
Dean's the best.
The dean is great when he's just... He just says it like it is, man, and I kind of respect him for it.
And they're on double secret probation. And in his voice, he's very, like, he's got that great voice.
What the first thing, but he even puts down his own people, like the students that are working for him.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, oh, you know, you're a sneaky little worm. You can spy on him, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, why don't you and Niedermeyer, because he's a sneaky little worm like you. Something. Yeah. So so this takes place at Farber College.
Yeah,
right?
Where is that, you think?
Well, did you look up?
I didn't
really
do any reading on it.
It is loosely based on a fraternity that existed at Dartmouth.
Okay.
I want to say it was Alpha Delta, and they went by Delta, just like in the movie. It's Delta Tau Chi, and the movie itself was filmed at it was on campus at University of Oregon. I found out. So they went out there. I guess a big Greek scene there. I don't know. Dartmouth is pretty big.
Yeah.
And so this is based on a real live,
real fraternity.
Real fraternity.
Yeah.
That my understanding is it no longer exists. But one of the writers of this, and I want to say it was Chris Miller, wrote a book in 2006 called The Real Animal House.
All right.
And so that might be one of those, like, you know what?
Yeah.
We might need to follow this one up.
Sure.
And read it, because I'm sure there's even some things that I read about it were like, well, there's a lot of the movie did happen, and there's I think other aspects of it that there's some artistic license, let's say.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's that.
Should we talk about the cast a little? Because there's some, if you've ever played 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon and you're thinking, I really could use Kevin Bacon and Donald Sutherland. Yeah,
and Donald Sutherland's in it. Kevin Bacon's in it.
Yeah.
John Belushi, of course, the guy that played Amadeus. I forget his name.
He?
Holtz.
Really?
Something Holtz.
Okay.
Really young. Who else?
So I want to talk a little about Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, he's great. He's go ahead. What do you got to say about him? He was pretty young in this too, but he was the professor.
He was super famous when this was done.
Okay.
And so they really somebody had called in a favor to ask him to do it, and they asked how much he would want, and one day of shooting. And the first ask was for $200,000 in 1980, 1978.
I guess that would have been kind of a lot of money in those days. Seems like a deal nowadays.
They offered him 2% take of whatever the movie brought in.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not interested in the points. All I want is the cash.
All right.
And they offered him $20,000. and he took $35,000.
Oh, nice. Good deal. Good bargaining.
Well,
yeah.
The irony is that the movie was huge. Box office was enormous.
Oh, yeah.
And he would have made, overall, he would have made roughly $10 million after inflation.
Yeah.
Not that Donald Sutherland needs the cash.
No.
Somebody asked him at one point in time, do you know what that would be worth?
Yeah.
If you had taken the points, and he did a great job, a great way to put it off. He said, no, and I'm sure I don't want to know.
Yeah. Nice. So he plays the professor who is he's young, and he's just talking immediately about how boring Wordsworth is, and none of this.
Who was it? Because I was not. So he's an English professor.
Yeah.
Like our esteemed colleague here, Kelly Daniels.
Yeah.
And who was he reading? He's like,
it was Words.
Incredibly boring.
No, it was Milton. It was Milton, and it was Paradise Lost, and he's right that Satan has all the.
So you've read it.
I have taken it in classes at some point or another. So Satan has all the great lines.
Okay.
And everybody says that, but maybe they say it because of that movie. And then the only thing he writes on the board through the whole class is Satan.
That's it.
And he's like, we love the bad guy. And that happens right at the beginning of the movie. And we realize, this is a movie where we love the bad guys.
We love the bad guys.
And they're the sloppy, kind of like seedy house. And they're contrasting that with the really ritzy, tons of money
next door
guys, and we have the sort of. There's also an inclusivity with the Delta frat because they just take anybody.
Yeah,
that's essentially it. And the other guys are super exclusive, and the way that they present that is that the two young kind of characters are. I don't know if it's called. I wasn't in a frat. Maybe we could talk about our own. I went to San Francisco State University. The only fraternity was the gay fraternity.
Oh.
It was just known as that. I forget what it was called.
Checks out.
It just wasn't that kind of a scene.
Yeah.
And I didn't live on campus. I just got an apartment in the city.
Okay.
And I was just living a city. Cool,
pretty good time to be in San Francisco.
Yeah, you could afford to be there as a young person waiting tables and stuff. But anyway, they go to some party to see if the fancy frat will take them, and it's clear that they're not interested. And the way that they show it is they put him in the room with all of the brown-skinned people.
Yeah.
And it is just nowadays you look at it, you go, wow, that is really, really fucking racist.
You can't make that scene today. No, there's a few of those.
The whole point is that the non-white people are not as good as the white people, and it is.
But
just
it's like they're sort of having a go at the waspy guys that are.
Oh yeah, no, you don't like
yeah.
those guys, but also the Deltas also aren't exactly. Well, they have a black band playing at one of their parties,
and there's a couple of guys that are clearly Jewish.
Yeah,
and so there was there's that, but yes,
yeah, and there's another. I don't know if we want to go there. There's one other moment that we all have that radar up nowadays in ways that I'm sure we didn't at the time. But they're playing.
Can I say the line?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mind if we dance with your dates?
Oh yeah, there's that.
Okay,
so
I didn't know if that was it.
That was the moment for sure. So they find some women to go out with.
They con some women into going out.
They con them in a way that nowadays would be a little rape culture-y.
Yeah,
there
was a lot of that.
But they, I don't know, the one character doesn't have sex with his passed out date.
He doesn't, but there is the little devil on his shoulder.
The devil and the angel, and he decides not to do it.
The first words out of the devil's mouth are "fuck her."
Yeah. Fuck her brains out.
Fuck her brains out.
Yeah, and she's passed out.
Yeah. I remember being in college and seeing that. I mean, like, oh boy, and this is 20-something years ago. Being like, you can't. Yeah,
he didn't do it though. At least.
Yeah.
So they trick these women. They find a woman at the all women's college that has just died.
Yep.
She just died.
Von Leibowitz.
Yeah, and then the guy goes there to pretend that he's her fiance to get sympathy from her.
Because the roommate was
just
cute.
Happens to be a really beautiful roommate.
Yeah.
And then, of course, what do you do when your close roommate dies and her fiance shows up? You want to comfort him by
obviously
hooking up with him.
Yes, of course.
Immediately that.
Yeah.
And then he also gets some friends, and they go out to party, and then they go into a black Roadhouse bar where the band is playing, and it's all black people inside.
It's the band that played at the house.
They played at the house. And so they all go there, and they're not really welcomed, it turns out.
Yeah.
And they ditch the women there, which it seems like the way that it's all set up to be raped. But thankfully that didn't seem to happen. Yeah. They didn't show that. But there is a moment, and it may be subtle. It wasn't that subtle to me. The woman, one of the women that they take, she's studying, like you imagine anthropology, but he's like, what are you majoring in? She's like, I study primitive cultures. And they immediately cut to the singer who's looking pretty simian at the, you know what I mean? The shot is very, and it is just,
You went,
I definitely backed away, or I just actually kind of grinned with delight because I knew we could talk about it.
Yeah.
But that is a point against it for sure nowadays.
There's a few.
Those are the two moments that I think really did go over the line. Otherwise, it's not really about that. It's just that it's a cheap joke on
that's
black people.
Exactly right.
That's kind of it.
Yes.
It's like, oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of cheap jokes in the whole thing, but that's probably one of the cheapest laughs.
And that's like, the one that just isn't acceptable now. Right. And maybe some of them are sexist in a way, but mostly it's just gross. I don't know if there's any fart jokes, but it's kind of fart joke level humor throughout. And John Belushi just has a charm about him.
He's
even
so good.
Though he is such a brute, and his name is Brutus or Blutowski.
Bluto, yeah.
Bluto. And he does that thing with his eyes where he raises his eyebrows, and it's just, he's somehow weirdly cute.
Yeah.
So there was that.
All right, so it brings me to a question, because we're talking about some of this stuff. Could you make this movie today? You can't make this exact movie.
You could make people do make this movie today.
Right.
Different versions of it.
But the stuff that we're pointing out, like, I don't think anybody's going to think, they're going to be like, you know what was really missing was subtle racism.
No. So what is this movie today or recently? There's the Will Ferrell one where he goes back to college.
Yeah, old school.
You don't think that feels...
I mean, I've seen it once.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I need to see this 50 times. It was after I was in college, I saw it, I was like, oh, okay, that was fun. Maybe I've seen it once since then.
Yeah.
But they did make the movie, and it's a little more PC. But
I'm sure.
Yeah.
You can't do this kind of thing. I don't know. I bet you if we just sat there, Googling and stuff, we could probably find a bunch of college party movies that...
Van Wilder, right? So Ryan Reynolds did
Yeah.
a couple of them. I think there's...
So this is National Lampoon, by the way. Should we mention what that is all about?
My gosh, yeah. I didn't realize it was National Lampoon.
Yeah, it's National Lampoon's Animal House.
Huh.
I believe, right? I think so.
I'd look it up, but we can't.
So... National Lampoon, of course, is a magazine from Harvard, and it is the gateway into a life, a lucrative career in comedy, and they're recruited by Saturday Night Live, and
Conan O'Brien was
one
famously,
of the
okay.
And I don't know. I feel
Smart
like I had something to. I watched this a while ago, and we were going to meet like the next night, and I had it all in my mind what I was going to say, and we had to delay a week. So, if I feel like I'm like one click
you're good.
Off,
I have some questions about the movie because as we've been talking about, we have some themes we've talked about. I'm going to get to that, but I like to see parallels like in something that I'm watching, and so Kent Dorfman, the chubby freshman that's come in.
Yeah.
is he not like the past version of Bluto? And like kind of a dorky freshman, and he comes in.
Oh, he's going to become Bluto?
Yeah, and he's got that sort of in him.
I guess. I don't know. He didn't seem like he had the...
So, okay, I was in a fraternity at the University of Iowa, and Dorfman's a legacy. And so generally, at least the fraternity I was in, took legacy pretty seriously. This guy, there was a guy that his grandfather was a legacy, and he came through the recruitment process, and it was like, whoa, okay. I mean, do we absolutely have to take him? And it was like, well, I mean, his grandfather was in this same fraternity for 4 years, and however long ago, and so it's kind of important that, it was like, okay, he just doesn't really seem to fit in, and a little bit of a Kent, situation, and after his freshman year, going into his sophomore year, he like totally changed and went from kind of quiet and a little dorky to, he went and worked out and just found the confidence, and like that changed. So in my head, I'm like, I'm seeing Dorfman turning into Blutarski, being like,
sure. Well, Blutowski becomes a senator.
Oh, he does. Yes, that's true.
That was one.
Checks out.
That might be one of the first movies where they show this is what they did in the future.
It's pretty cool.
Like that little, it is. It's a good way to end it because it doesn't really end. They all lost. They got kicked out of college, and but they didn't lose because they, destroyed the float. And I guess what's winning about it from a sort of a long view is that it is against elitism, pretension, this kind of empty ceremony, and into hedonism, but also authenticity. Yeah. And they are more inclusive, and they're not fancy, and they're really and so it's easy to kind of root for them, especially if you think about that time. The 70s. It was they're still kind of putting some distance between that generation and the silent or the great generation. Greatest generation, where they would wear suits every day. And so there was that kind of thing going on. I did want to, this is not a very elegant segue, but you remember what they do to Dorfman's car, right?
Yeah,
so he gets the car.
Yeah.
He gets, and boy, that trope has been played too in American Graffiti.
Yeah.
The guy borrowing the nice car, and you're worried about it, and it gets stolen or whatever.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
That's right. Yeah. So the car gets smashed, and I mean they were like willfully smashing that car. There was no attempt to even.
Then they decided to go with insurance fraud to replace it.
Well, here's the thing: the statute of limitations is up, so I was totally involved in a very similar insurance fraud. You ready for this?
Yes.
So 30 years ago, they're not going to come knocking on my door, right? You think?
No, it's
okay. You feel confident in this?
So I'm waiting to see how much the car costs.
Okay. So here's the story. I may have mentioned this guy to you before. This high school buddy of mine who lived out of town and had to throw parties.
Yeah.
His last name sounded kind of like a certain word that became his nickname, which was Reefer.
Nice.
So Reefer, he was just a wild man, and he lived he had to take a special bus in to the high school.
Short bus.
It was a short bus. Because he lived way out. He lived in the country.
Yeah.
And his buddy, the only other guy he hung out with, was the only farmer. So I'm in Iowa. We're in Iowa here. You see farmers all over. Yep. They're respected. They have a lot of money generally. But Southern California, you're wearing a cowboy hat and boots to school every day. Oh. You're just not fitting in that way. And so good old Jerry Baker. I'm just going to drop his name. And
nice.
If he's listening,
here's
how
to
you doing, brother?
Yeah.
But he and Reefer would hang around, and Reefer was just a wild man, a party man, and he had his sidekick, which is the farmer guy. So he always had to kind of get attention because he would just be ignored, right? Just because of where he lived. So he was just wilder than everybody. He also grew up with a single dad. His mom, they divorced, and then his sister went with the mom, and he went with the dad. And this was a dad in the 80s who was into like a men's rights group. So nowadays you hear about that stuff, right? Yeah. In the 80s, if you were into that. So this is Southern California, and he would like wear a holster with a pistol while mowing his lawn.
As one does.
One does nowadays around here. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But Southern California, like, it was a crazy thing to do. And his ex-wife tried to run him over in a car when they were going through the divorce part.
As one does.
And so he was pissed off, and he thought the divorce was all rigged. And so he was that kind of guy, really intense, very kind of a scary guy. But Reefer was very grown up and mature because this guy made him do stuff and take care of things. So Reefer's dad has a heart attack while driving. He survives, but the car is crashed and he's in the hospital. Reefer needs to be the man of the house. There's bills that need to be paid. There's.
Oh, no.
And so it gets him a rental car. Of course, Reefer just takes that thing out partying every chance he gets and races it around. And I wasn't around for this part of it, but he smashed it up somehow.
Sure.
Kind of like Animal House, right?
Yeah.
That's when I come into the
Fast
story.
Times at Ridgemont High.
Just like, I can fix it.
Yeah.
So Jerry comes up to me with the plan. He goes, "Hey, we need you. This is the plan." Reefer goes to class in third period or whatever. So he's on the roll. We ditch third period.
Yeah.
And Jerry breaks into the car, hot wires it, which is what he knows how to do.
Love it.
And I had my Ford Courier, 72 Ford Courier pickup. I followed Jerry in the hot-wired car, and I'm driving my truck, out into this place called the Canyon, San Mateo Canyon, where you'd like ride motorcycles and have bonfire parties at night.
Or go push a car off a cliff.
Exactly. Yes. And so we drive it around, and then we're like using his pocket knife to like slice up the interior to make it look vandalized. And then my truck was such a piece of shit, I just rammed it a few times because it was just fun. And then we pushed it off a cliff. And then Jerry hopped in my truck, and we went back, and we'd missed a class period, but then we went back to the class. So Reefer has the total alibi right after he gets out of class, lunchtime or whatever. He's like, "Oh, my God, my car. It was parked right here." And he calls the cops, or he calls the cops. And full on, the insurance company interviewed him, and he thought they knew, but he didn't crack. And they couldn't prove it. And we also were wearing gloves and stuff when we were like messing with the car and he got away with it. That's the moral of that story.
They're going to be hauling that car out of storage somewhere and doing DNA tests all over
they
it
may,
now.
They may.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's right out of Animal House.
Yeah, that was very Animal House. It was fun.
You were watching that part. You're like, this is definitely believable. I could see that somebody would do that.
That is definitely what I thought of. It brought memories, good old memories.
Yeah.
This
was the movie itself, I guess. The car is one of my favorite parts about it because Dorfman is freaking out. Yeah. It's my brother's car. And
he's crying. He just starts crying.
Was the one that was the legacy.
Right.
So, yeah, he is crying. But it was a Lincoln Continental with suicide doors.
Yeah.
And I hate to think about what that would be worth today if they had not absolutely destroyed it in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great car. It's like the car from The Matrix. The one with the doors that open.
No, I know the suicide doors. Like, I love that they're called suicide because you can't jump out while driving as if that's an option generally.
Yeah. Okay, so I did ask the question, can you make the movie today? But I think the answer is no.
Not like that.
So
I'm just trying to think. What are some really gross, like raunchy comedies? I know that there's the. Have you seen This Is the End?
Yeah.
James Franco.
It's so good.
That group, James Franco and some of those people, that was pretty funny stuff. And This Is the End is pretty great.
It's a great movie.
And that was pretty raunchy. They're doing coke and stuff. And there's
what about
a lot
Something About Mary?
Something About Mary is really funny.
Really funny.
Yeah, the whole like hair gel scene it's
amazing.
Is really funny. But also Matt Dillon's character. Like the first time you see him, they walk in, and he like stands up and his pants are down around his knees. Like it's just, and they never explain it.
No,
and
they don't bother. It's the Farrelly brothers are amazing. Yeah,
that is easily as raunchy. And I think, as far as where your sympathies are, the character who is special needs is, kind of treated in a really sweet way.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and Matt Dillon is the guy who's an asshole.
Yeah.
Whereas Ben Stiller is sympathetic, and that's why Mary likes him.
Yeah.
So it's a sweeter movie in terms of our understanding of underdogs.
Yeah.
Versus like, but otherwise they don't hold back on the raunch at all. And
So I'm gonna do a little comparison to real life. This, when I was in college in a fraternity and watching this movie, I was like, this is totally unlike anything that would, and looking back on it, it's like, yeah, it's close enough.
Yeah.
My favorite is when they're starting their pledging, they get pledge names, and the Bluto's going through and telling them what their pledge names are. We actually had a pledge name ceremony. It was not condoned by our national chapter, but somebody had come up with it, and we would come up with ridiculous names for people. And it was a little different in that we wouldn't insist on calling somebody by their pledge name. Like if you were at the house, then you would typically go by it. Like you would knock on somebody's door and you'd say, I'm pledge so-and-so, asking permission to enter. And if somebody wanted to be an asshole, I'd be like, yeah, go away and come back in 10 minutes. And maybe I'll let you in just to hear him do it again.
Right.
And some of the names were meaner than others. But like some of them were fun. So one example was we had a guy that was pledge moose. And the reason was we needed a moose. And everybody, there was people that didn't know that guy's name by the time he was a senior.
Nice.
It was just Moose.
Moose is
It's a good one.
Yeah.
And the guy telling him his name, and you'd have to say it like I'm pledge so and so.
There was a baseball player, Moustakas. What's his first name?
I don't know.
Anyway, he was a brewer, and he played on other teams, but they called him Moose.
Yeah.
So,
did he have to say it with antlers?
I don't think that.
Yeah, we made him.
Moustakas.
Okay,
that's.
I'm pledge.
What
Moose.
about the thank you, sir? May I have another? Did you guys get paddled?
No, we didn't. There wasn't really. It was a lot of mental stuff, I would say. And the reality is that the fraternity I was in was about a year after. The year that I joined was the year after some trouble had been had for having all of the pledges sleep in the house for the initiation week. And so it was like you're not allowed to do anything, and it was from the national chapter that a stop was put to everything. And I remember being like, okay, well, it's like this now, but they took it pretty easy on us. But my comment at the time was, it's going to get worse. And somebody's like, no, because we're not doing it. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but this is going to get bad again.
Oh, you mean just in the future? Not to you personally,
no,
but okay, I see, yeah.
And all it took was somebody to transfer from another school, and that's exactly what happened.
Okay. And brought all the evil with him?
It was from a southern school, too.
He goes, I'm going to teach you boys how to do it.
He had a fucking great car. He had a Pontiac Trans Am, like one of the last generation Trans Ams.
Burt Reynolds, kind of Smokey and the Bandit action.
Quite a bit newer, like 20 years newer, and it was a WS. I want to say it was WS6, and people that know me and know some of the guys that were younger than me will know who this is.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you but I'll tell you his name because I'll tell you what was on the car. There was. I will say there was a Confederate flag on the car.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, but it will surprise you when I tell you his name.
Jimmy Carter.
No,
okay.
No, but
yeah,
but there was also a Confederate flag in this movie.
Yeah, there was.
Yep.
It was that one the biker character had a Confederate
D-Day.
flag. Yeah,
my fraternity had a D-Day.
Yeah,
and named as such because he destroyed everything.
Okay.
He was famous for being able to kick out ceiling tiles.
Huh.
On a hallway floor, he could kick.
He could kick above his head at that point.
I don't know how, but
wow.
we would end up with broken ceiling tiles when D-Day would come over.
That's talent.
Yeah. Nice guy, but
Okay. Don't mess with him though.
No.
He can kick.
D-Day. Yeah.
He's a kicker.
He was. Yep. A lot of doors broken down. You want to get into a room, and it was like, you know what I can do? I can just I got really good with if someone just used the handle lock, I could pop it with a credit card.
Yeah.
So these are skills, life skills that you can learn in a fraternity.
I feel that Animal House, the idea that the heroes or the scruffy underdog heroes are a frat doesn't seem like that would be the movie that was made today. I just think just being a frat automatically means you're privileged, that you're right. Isn't that kind of?
I did not feel that we were treated particularly well by the University of Iowa. They didn't really want us there, and it was like, well, now that we've allowed this problem since the 19-teens.
Well, frats are private housing.
Yep.
And that's something that article said.
No, I want to talk about
And the universities, they want you to be in their housing because they're making money off of it.
Do you know what they do in some campuses?
What?
They own the Greek houses.
Okay.
And I'm like, we went to University of Nebraska.
The houses themselves, and then the Greek organizations, the frats have to rent from them?
Yes.
Is that okay?
So
that's how
they
get
then they
their
can
money.
Also, it's like, oh, well, whatever the local landlord laws are in terms of asking for access or anything else, they have a lot more control.
Yeah.
Iowa did not. They didn't really want us there, for me, I liked it. So I went to a big high school, big, I guess, for the Chicago burbs anyway, and my graduating class was like 730 and 2,000 something total. Enrollment 2,800, whatever, and maybe 3,000 by the time we were done.
Not your class,
the overall school size.
That
the class was 730.
My high school was that size.
Okay.
There should have been 2 high schools.
Yeah, ours
but
too.
Guess why they didn't split them?
Ours was because of sports.
Yeah, football team.
Yeah.
They wanted their football team to be
crazy?
more competitive.
Too.
Yeah.
We weren't good at football. We were good at everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, our football was okay, but 3 out of the 4 years I was there, state championship in soccer for the biggest class of schools for boys and girls both.
Right.
We had swimming state titles and everything. So, they eventually did it.
Yeah.
And now they're talking about closing one of the schools.
Yeah. Well,
because we don't have the population anymore.
The population is
shrinking.
Also,
people are going to warmer climates. I know western suburbs of Chicago sounds really tropical, but yeah. So,
I don't know.
But so it made the campus at Iowa a lot smaller. So I knew people. I had friends that were in other fraternities. My sister was before me at the University of Iowa and was in a sorority and was like, oh, you're going to go through Rush. I lived in my freshman year. So I lived in the fraternity house my freshman, sophomore, and junior year. I never lived on campus at the University of Iowa, which is, people are like, well, you can do that? Yeah. So,
well, that article we read is...
Let's talk about it.
Okay, well, it starts off with this idea, with this anecdote about how the author, I think, was a graduate teaching assistant at Harvard.
Yep.
And one of her students missed the final.
Yeah.
But he didn't write the email to say, hey, sorry, I missed it. He had his resident life person who essentially is this nanny that takes care of everybody and then does all their correspondence for them. And it's really shocking because it's like, wow, what kind of people, these are supposed to be the leaders, and yet they're being coddled.
Us state schoolers, we did not get coddled.
No. It's called Coddling of the American Undergraduate, which of course speaks to the Jonathan Haidt book and Greg Lukianoff or something book, The Coddling of the American Mind.
Yep.
I actually haven't read it, but I've heard about it so much. I feel like I know what it is, and it's. I've heard one person said that it sort of introduced this whole idea of the heterodox community, which are mostly left of center people who just got fed up with essentially the social justice movement and what they felt like it was going too far or whatever. But that this book, and then of course the book also has its detractors. Like I said, I haven't read the book and I haven't read the detractors, so I won't even comment on it. But my own experience is I think it's relevant. I think we're coddling our students and our generations to the point where they're not able to do basic stuff for themselves, and it's not their fault. It goes from their parents doing it for them.
How do you do that? Do you let them fail?
Well, I mean, I
agree with you, by the way, and I'm asking for
school. You mean, or do you mean?
So, as an example, I taught at the same place for, I think I've said I was the lowest rung on the totem pole at Augustana, and
those were the good old days. I could just make you go and make me coffee and stuff.
Yeah, it was great.
Hey, Jones.
Yeah, like I was a pledge.
Get your ass in here.
And so in between getting coffee, I would teach the management information systems class, and one of the classes was pretty straightforward. And I had a kid who was just really into baseball, and it was 2016, and he was a really big Cubs fan, and just sort of decided he wasn't going to write the papers that needed to be written.
Because the Cubs were
having
a good season.
He was drunk every night and watching the Cubs play.
They
won the World Series in 2016. So and
so it worked.
I asked him.
His sacrifice was.
It did. It worked.
Yeah.
It's only weird if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So he stayed after. He's like, hey, I didn't get that paper done. I was like, okay, I'm willing to play this game. I will let you turn that paper in. I will give you. For each, let's see, what was it? Like each day you'll get 5% off. So the maximum he could have gotten at the time that this conversation was happening was like a 70%. Then another week went by and he's like, hey, can I still get you that paper? I was like, if you would like a 35%.
Yep. Pretty soon it's going to be negative numbers and it'll be taking away from like the other.
And then he didn't do the next paper.
Yeah.
And
of course you fail. I mean, when they don't do the work.
But I compared that with my experience at a big school where nobody gave a shit.
Oh no, you just got the grade.
And my parents certainly weren't going to call for me to go, oh no, if I had called my parents and said, I need you to talk to a professor about a grade that I got, my mom would have let me know how displeased she was, and then she would have told my dad, who'd have been like, well, I guess you're just going to have to figure it out.
Well, here's the thing about that is we are strictly forbidden by federal law called FERPA from discussing a student's grades with anybody but that student, including their parents, without this kind of really elaborate written permission and all that. Which, for us, it's just like, no,
we're not going to do it.
We don't talk to. Also, I found out that I can't discuss grades over email.
Also true.
Because it's not considered secure.
Right.
So it has to be through like a secure portal or something. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you
guys have tools you use to do that. Moodle, I think you guys use. Probably that's considered secure.
Yeah. There's ways to deliver grades electronically and stuff like that. And just the grading system, that we use, which is an online thing, and But yeah, no. Even though we do coddle students, we still fail them when they don't turn in their work.
How many students have you failed? Do you know?
A handful.
Okay.
But it's never because you're just not a good enough writer. It's always because
you didn't.
You didn't show up the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And
I thought I was going to feel badly that, I was like, this does not matter. Like, this is not the only class you have failed. So, this is one of several, and the problem was going to resolve itself. Yeah. So it did.
Well, but just to get back to this article and what it's getting at, it also touched on an anecdote, a story that is often spoken of, which is it's the thing that set off the whole culturally insensitive Halloween costume.
Oh, yeah.
And what happened is there were these boomer
at Yale, right?
Professors. Was it Yale? Yeah. They were like the professors that were living in the dorm, and they were like the one that were supposed to send the email. That was what role they used.
They were the nannies that lived in the dorms. So we should clarify that. The nannies that live in the dorms were professors that work at these schools.
Yes.
Could you imagine?
That would be really insulting, I feel like. It's like, I'm glad I really worked my ass off on this PhD and then published a book or two so I could get tenure and so that I could
live in the dorms.
So I could babysit a bunch of spoiled brats, man. Somebody, I don't know, some kind of like student organization wrote this email that went out to everybody, or a letter, an open letter that was just kind of like finger wagging everybody about. It wasn't a student organization. It was somehow like some dean's office. It was like officially, the kind of university's policy, but it wasn't really the university's policy. It was just one branch of the university just took it upon themselves to kind of wave their finger at students about Halloween. And one of the nanny professors wrote a letter and she was like an old hippie, a boomer hippie, and she's like, hey, I don't think it's up to us, the grown-ups, to tell them how to do their Halloween party. They should navigate it themselves. And I'm not saying that dressing up in an outfit that is offensive to groups is a good idea, but it's their mistake to make. It's not our job to micromanage their social lives.
She's letting Prince Harry go to that party back in the day dressed in the full Nazi uniform. Because he did that. He did it. Yeah.
Nice.
It was also
good thinking.
It was a Halloween party of costumes in bad taste.
Yeah.
Which doesn't get much worse.
Do you have any cancelable Halloween costumes?
No. Thank God.
If you did, would you say it though?
Yeah, I feel like I'm. Better.
What is a risque, surely you've dressed up as something that was like funny at least, or.
No, but I knew some people that went as the Jackson 5.
Yeah, and they weren't black, I take it.
They were not.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that.
You're definitely not supposed to do that. But at the time, it was like.
My best Halloween costume was one in which not a single person all night long knew what I was, but I still was,
you nailed it.
I nailed it, and also I was very proud, but also like better than everybody because I'm the only one that knows how I'm dressed.
How very English professor-y of you.
I was a grad student, and so really snooty, like you don't know.
I'm so much smarter.
Yes,
it's great.
It's a movie called Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. I think it's Sam Peckinpah.
Okay.
It is a 1970s Western, takes place in Mexico, and it's got this lounge singer guy who there's this like Mexican sort of rancho owner, and some like wandering cowboy impregnates his daughter.
And, hate it when that
and
happens.
So the guy he's essentially like that era's narco boss. Like, he's got like a whole army that. And so he says, bring me the head of Alfredo Garcia and I'll give you, a couple $1,000 or whatever, and those, a lot of money.
Yeah.
Now this lounge singer guy, like in Mexico City or wherever he is, hears about this, and he happens to know that the guy actually died and was buried up in northern Mexico somewhere. Like he died
He's got to go get the head.
Just the head.
Yeah.
And because it's worth that money. And so he goes, and he needs money. And so it's his, like, this epic journey. And think about him. He's got, like, he's a famous actor. I can't remember his name right now.
I love that this is the backstory for a costume that you wore.
Yeah.
Because nobody has any idea.
And he's got, like, the total porn star mustache and the big old wide lapel suit. And it's a whole, like, epic journey of him going and finding the body, digging it up, like having to cut the head off. And he puts it in it is gross, and he puts it in a pillowcase, and he's carrying it around to get it back to the boss guy. Yeah. But other people are trying to get the head from him because they realize what it is and that it's worth something. And as the movie goes on, like, the bag that he's at first, it's just this white pillow, case.
It's got to be.
And then it gets kind of yellow and red and bloody, and then it's just covered in flies, and like it's obviously just like the head is completely just reeking, and so I was like the lounge singer guy with the mustache.
I figured you were the lounge singer,
and and he carried a gun, so I had like a fake gun and like on my belt, and then I had a bag with like. I just found out like a volleyball or something in it, but I got a bunch of plastic flies, and then I dyed and there was like blood, like and I was just like walking around all night long and trying to explain to people. Sam,
there's this movie.
Have you heard of Sam Peckinpah? Like, I mean, he's like in film school. You study this guy. None of these people took that film class.
Man.
So it was just going to like state school.
Yeah.
If I was at Yale, they would have got it.
They would have got it.
And so that was wasted effort.
I guess I was Luigi one year with a real mustache. Yeah. So there's something about guys in particular. We like it when we can either wear bras, like with balloons in them. I've not done it. Or we can have some ridiculous facial hair. And during 2020, I grew my beard out really long, and I didn't use a razor because the last time I shaved was January 1st, 2017. I've not shaved since then, so I clippered it really short, and I curled up with in an amazing way, like wax and everything on my mustache. Oh. And I had like the Luigi hat, and my wife was Mario.
You could have just stuck with that mustache and be like you could have gone the hipster route.
I could have
from that.
It was
nice.
Man. I don't know how. Even the rest of it, though, like getting rid of all of the facial hair was very cold. And that was a nice, probably don't remember, but really nice weather that year for Halloween year. Yeah. Well,
Sounds
so
good.
I wanted to go back to the article.
Yeah.
Because one of the things they said that there's new rules that have been put in place in various places. Like if you are any kind of a teacher, you can't fraternize.
Yeah.
Lack of a better word.
You can't
with
screw your students anymore.
That'd be kind of trouble for me.
I got my job just in time, man. I mean, Jesus. Like, why do you think I went into this racket? It wasn't
exactly.
for the money.
That's why my wife went into it. That's how we met.
So,
you know that, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Poor thing.
Decency and delicacy told me not to say anything.
No, you should.
Since
I'm giving her shit. Yeah.
Totally just, she's robbing the cradle.
Yeah, or the grave. The cradle?
The cradle.
Yeah, I don't know.
It is pretty disgusting what you guys were up to, but whatever. I got
a B- in that class, and I mean barely.
You got a what?
A B- in her class.
Good.
I was horrible at Spanish.
I'm glad that she separates your intellectual ability and your hotness.
For my flirting?
Like, yeah.
I don't know that you could. I know you can. It's,
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So, I have an article in the Sun. You could look it up. It's called Love Your Enemies. And it was about a totally legal and, in my opinion, ethical sort of connection that is with a former student. Ooh. I was a graduate teaching assistant, though. I'm pretty young, and so, but also, and then the attraction started to become very clear during class.
Oh.
And there was these emails that were first just teacher-student emails, and then they started getting more personal. And they didn't get... And then I finally just said, hey, let's...
Hit the brakes here? Or?
Let's talk after I post grades.
Yeah.
And so you could read it if you're curious.
The statute of limitations is not up on that one. It might be on the car. But.
Well, but here's the thing. My basic politics, but at the time I was more unquestioningly leftist, and it just seemed like correct, and things that didn't.
Like
on the other side were just wrong. And I live next to the Carter Center for Peace in Atlanta. And so I start having this flirtation with this young woman, and then we start seeing each other later. But she is not just a Republican.
The head of the College Republicans.
She was a professional lobbyist for an organization that you would immediately recognize if I said it. And she was like regularly having meetings with the governor. And it was...
my.
Yes, it was weird.
That's super weird.
It was, I mean, I have to say...
How long did that last?
Didn't it... Oh, God. Read the article. It's
right.
Because it's a thing. And there's so much ins and outs, if you know what I mean.
Oh, no.
That wasn't the pun I was going for, but there it was. It was probably a year, maybe, we were together.
Okay.
Something like that. But it was messier than it sounds. I don't want to get more into it than that. I'll just leave it as a cliffhanger. It's out there, The Sun. Love your enemies, Kelly Daniels. And The Sun gives you one free article per month. Okay. So you don't even have to pay the
How do you know that I haven't read all my articles already for this month?
The Sun. You're big.
Not.
You're always poaching The Sun. You don't want to buy
No.
You don't want the subscription, but you want to read several articles per month.
What does the subscription cost?
I don't know. I got mine for free. So,
yeah, well, you got published in it. I hope so.
What is it? I don't know. You know how it is. It's like the list price is this, but they're always giving you a deal, and I don't know. It's a monthly. It's probably $50 a year or something.
Okay.
I don't think it's that much money.
Yeah, check it out.
It's a great magazine.
So I would say, I think I'm kind of I'm out of
things
my notes
to talk
and
about.
Things to talk about, but to kind of bring it back around, we've sort of made this episode about those lovable rascals in college.
Yeah.
But we want people to be a little more grown up, right?
Yeah.
Like,
did you want to? Yeah, I think we do. And, well, we want to let them make their own mistakes. And I just don't feel comfortable being the nanny. And
I feel like my parents were very much the. I grew up in a house where if I said I need you to talk to a teacher about something,
they'd
have been like,
what the hell's your problem?
What's wrong with you? That you're the problem here, because it was never the teacher ever.
I do think that script flipped over the generations, but maybe we're back in a new zone where we realize that we have to let our kids make their own mistakes and fight their own battles, and even if the professor's totally wrong, that also is something I would want my kid to deal with without me calling the dean and trying to. For one thing, I don't have any weight to throw around, so that makes it a lot easier from a parenting point of view. But there is one other thing I wanted to mention, and about the lasting influence of the movie Animal House, and we talked about that there's all these like raunchy comedies that sort of go from that owe an homage to it.
I think so.
But here is a movie that maybe we can talk about this at some point. And in fact, I think I'm going to show it to the next first year class that I teach in fall, because I liked it so much. Nobody knows this movie. It just showed up for a second in the movie theaters, immediately disappeared. I don't even know where to find it online. When I watched it, I had to get a DVD from a library, like interlibrary loan, a DVD. And so my wife had like this little DVD player from work that is like the size.
We don't have them anymore.
The size of a DVD cover that you have to plug in to a laptop.
Oh my!
That we then had to plug the laptop into our TV.
Nice.
And but it is the great Richard Linklater. Do you know who Richard Linklater is?
The name.
So the movie Dazed and Confused.
Oh yeah.
That's Richard Linklater.
Okay.
And his whole filmography, he's one of my favorite. He's a kind of a hero of mine. I love his sense of humor, the way he tells stories. So Dazed and Confused is about the graduating class of seniors in some college, in some high school in Texas in 1976.
Yeah.
Of course, the movie was made in the 90s, so it's got very much a looking back quality. And we know, like, the watchers of the film know things that the kids in the film don't know about what's coming for them. They're like, oh, man, I can't wait. The 80s are going to be awesome and that kind of stuff. And we're like, yeah. So this movie is called Everybody Wants Some.
Okay.
And it is a similar kind of movie, but it takes place in the 80s, which is Everybody Wants Some is a Van Halen song.
Okay.
And it is about, it follows, instead of like one day, the last day of school for high school, this is the move-in first weekend of college. So this kid, this young guy, shows up, and it's his first weekend moving into, and he's on the baseball team. So it's this unnamed, like, Texas State University.
Yeah, yeah.
And all the baseball players live in a very Animal House-like place.
Oh, fun.
And it's got a lot of baseball in it. They have a practice once. And every actor that's playing it actually knows how to play baseball, that's really fun watching them play.
That's crazy.
And so the kid is a pitcher, and the pitchers are just different from the other players.
Yeah.
And he has kind of a mentor character, an older player who kind of is showing him the ropes of college. And it is it's kind of raunchy, and it's not that raunchy, but it's about partying. And but it's a really sweet movie, and that it just doesn't have a mean bone in its body. Like, everybody, there's no villain. There's weirdly no real conflict. It's not. They're just looking for girls. That's what the whole thing is.
I mean, I feel like there's vaguely conflict in that was a stretch in Animal House.
Oh yeah, who cares? They didn't give a shit.
They didn't give.
They all became senators and stuff anyway. They were already at that school.
So I think it's fitting. It goes with what we've.
But I think that having watched Animal House recently, I immediately thought to Everybody Wants Some. I'm like, Linklater is intentionally making this baseball house they have kind of like Animal House.
And it's a little bit later.
But almost nobody has seen it, and I think it's just got this beautiful life lesson sort of about what college is about and what it should be about. And that's why I want to show it to these undergrads, these freshmen that I'm going to be teaching. But
take away that entitlement feeling of you're just going to graduate if you show up, right? Like, that's also not how it works.
Yeah. But maybe we could watch that if we can find it, and we could even blend that into
I'll work my magic.
We could blend it into a baseball episode.
I think we definitely need to talk about.
We could either do two for, but yeah. I guess that's all I have to say.
It had occurred to me as I was watching this. We've been talking a lot about dystopian societies.
Yeah.
Is Animal House about a dystopian society?
A dystopia. I do like the how they turn the car into a Mad Max mobile that goes in it and it destroys the.
My favorite's the line that I think it was D-Day yells before he runs it. I don't know. I forget who's driving, but they yell ramming speed in the way that he says it.
Yeah,
ramming speed.
Yeah,
it's great.
It is great.
It's a great part, and it has. I mean, it's the homecoming parade. Who cares?
Oh. I was trying to remember some good lines, and the mean dean.
Yeah.
The one where he's like, I should have wrote it down, but when he's talking about Dorfman, he's like, what is it? Fat,
drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son. And I'm like,
Because he's got a 0.2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, this guy is a great villain because you like watching him.
Train in the rain.
The train is going. The rain is falling. What a day. What a Easter Monday. It is
Easter Monday.
And we still have beer left for our pitcher.
Well, our post-recording chat, I suppose. Yeah. I think I'm good.
Are we done?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. I'm, let's see if I can get the right, there.
Thanks, everybody.
There's that music.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Take care.
Yeah. All right, I'll go turn it off.
Yep.